Welcome to MJ Hobby Corner, everyone. This is video part 2 of making the board for Wargaming. This is for my weird War II games in 15 millimeter. This project actually started about a month ago when I made all those little Weird War II vehicles, walkers and tanks and such. That's going to be an ongoing project. Every so often I'll add new vehicles. But now I did some terrain, some houses, some hedges, and now I'm finishing up the board. So let's go check out that board.
Okay, so just doing a little dry brush here on the board with a little bit of light mocha from Apple Barrel Paints. Okay, and this will just bring out some of the textures. Again, this texturing was done by spray painting the foam, letting the spray paint melt the foam, and then adding a coat of gesso to all that. Gesso paste, which I made from cornstarch and flour, adding both of those filler materials to the gesso, and then, of course, white glue and a little bit of paint. And that made my gesso paste with water, warm water actually, so it would help dissolve the filler materials, which were cornstarch and flour. And then just let everything dry. Now I'm just doing the dry brush. So I have my texture for this side, and now is this little section here that I'll work on. This is going to be a little more complex because I'm going to turn this into a river. So we'll just wait a little bit on that. First, I want to do the vegetation areas for this board, and maybe think about a road. Okay, so all right, let me get to that. Okay, so I just do a random pattern where I want my green to go, my flocking powder, which is really just sawdust, and I actually just put the sawdust on and then add the color after. So I'm just going to spread this out with an old brush, right? And there are little open spots, and that's okay. I want that. I don't want the vegetation area to be like covering every nook and cranny. In fact, I leave little depressions open on purpose. All right, so I'm just going to add a little bit of my coarser sawdust. And this is a very quick and dirty way to do it. Much simpler. So this way I don't have to do tons of batches of homemade flock. I just spread the sawdust. It's going to get painted anyway. And yeah, so. All right, so I'm finishing up my other vegetation patterns. Again, this is a very quick and dirty way to make a gaming surface using very thick white foam. Okay, this is a pretty thick slab. And then melting the foam, for texture. And then the only messy part, it's the gesso, making the gesso. That's like the messy part. And but it is necessary because the gesso really strengthens the foam and preserves all that texturing, right? The finer sawdust that I added here, and then it transitions into coarser sawdust, kind of to the illusion of a transitional zone in vegetation. Really, it's just a matter of taste. So I gotta wait for everything to dry before I can do any dry brushing on the vegetation. And I'm going to use from from my Apple Barrel collection, I'm going to use a pavement, okay, which is just like a really, really dark gray, almost black, All right, so that's going to be my road. Okay, so my road is done, and it's going to continue on this side as well, right down the river there. I One of these lengths of road may actually lead to a bridge over there, a very small bridge. This is going to be for 15 millimeter. Again, I think I've said that already. Once this dries, I can take a very light tan and dry brush only the road areas, or like a white rather, a very light gray or white, and just dry brush the road there to get all of that texture to really stick out. Okay, so the two boards are united. It is now one board. That's what I wanted. We have this very nice slope coming down here, and then it kind of goes up just a little bit. This is the straight part, really, where the river is. But here, there's a slope here on this side that goes down. And I like that. Rather than having a straight board, have this nice, like, sloping, undulating, very gentle, of course, a gentle slope into, the bottom area here. The roads have now been pretty much finished. This is how I want the roads to look. And to seal off the openings, I used hot glue, then cover all that with more sawdust, and that's going to get painted. You can also texture these areas, make some interesting like rock formations with the hot glue if I wanted to, but I'm not going to. Now, technically, for joining the pieces, you could probably use a caulk. There's so many different caulks out there that would probably work better for this, and even for the river to fill in some of the spots that are a little too deep for me. There are caulks and things to use that would work very well for this kind of stuff. But I don't have any, so I'm going to work with what I have. And we're going to start on the river real soon. And then there's going to be a little bridge there. I did some quick spray painting of the vegetation areas very carefully, very quick short bursts of paint just to get the base coat on the vegetation. Once that dries up fully, and I have to let it dry completely, I go back and dry brush with a much lighter green, fix up the blotches a little bit here along the where the boards join. So for the river, I use an unorthodox technique. I use plastic. Okay, and this is stuff that I love to recycle because it's everywhere. This is just a regular plastic. And for those of you that have been with the channel a long time, you know that I use these things a lot of times and put them on, just lay them on an area where I think there could be a river, and that gives me the sort of wrinkly water effect, whatever. This time I use some Gorilla adhesive, and have to be careful with this stuff because it will melt foam. It will melt some foams, okay? And it definitely melts the plastic sheet that I cut to fit the river just enough that I can get all of those edges secured. And what I do is I go back with a brush, very carefully just tuck in all the little edges, okay? And this is the kind of thing that really needs to dry before I do anything. Okay, so make sure all the little edges are there. And I can come back with a little bit of hot glue and just fill in some of those edges. There's going to be a little waterfall back there with the hot glue. So I don't use any resins. The bottom is basically just hot glue that I made some lines and waves and undulations, so it really does look like a rushing water. I generally don't like to paint my rivers blue, but since this board has a lot of green, I decided to go with the darker blue. And then I go back with a little bit of white and highlight some of the areas on top of the plastic. You can see some highlights already, okay? And what I love about this technique is that sheet of plastic, this stuff, if you glue it right, maybe a little bit in the middle and all along the edges, it really can look like water, especially at certain angles with the light hitting it. It saves me so much time, and it saves me having to work with resins or anything else like that.
All right, so that's all I have for today, folks. Now in part 3, we're going to look at how I finished the board, add a bridge to the river section there, a modular bridge, and then that will complete the board. Do some odds and ends. This is a technique, the whole melting with the foam. It's not unique to me. I mean, I know other people have tried it. I've been made aware of that. And so it's just a good technique, so I reiterate, I've been using it for a long time now, and I keep using it because it's just good melting the foam and stuff, to get an interesting texture. And I've used it in many different ways to make terrain and melting the foam away and all that. Just be careful with any fumes. Anyone that tries this, just make sure that you work in a very ventilated area. You do not want to inhale any fumes that come out of that foam. All right. So see you in part 3. This is part 2. Board is just about done.